Hi, I'm Chef Adam Moore, and you are in my kitchen today. Today we're going to show you a few very important tips before you cook any food for your family. We're going to cover things like washing your hands, food safety, also safety of using knives and how to use a knife properly. I'll show you how to also put some food and wash some food and prep food basically. But these are important tips that you should be using each and every day, especially when you're preparing food for your family. We will go through these tips one by one, and hopefully you learn enough to use this in your kitchens at home. Your kitchen can be of different sizes, it could be different equipment, but what I'm going to show you is basic information that all chefs start out with, but I'm showing you so that you can use in your house. So we're going to show you our very first and most important tip right now, and that is how to wash your hands. Okay, washing your hands, the most important subject we talk about. Now, before you start in the kitchen, first of all, remove any excess jewelry. A watch or a wedding ring is permitted. Watch or wedding ring. Anything else or extra jewelry, especially if you're baking or using your hands, take away any excess jewelry except for a wedding ring and watch. Washing your hands is important. Now, we all know that during COVID we've been using hand sanitizer and soap. The most important one is using soap. Hand sanitizer is good when you're out and about. It doesn't replace washing your hands. The most important thing to do is wash your hands. And I'm going to show you how to properly do that. Let's go to the sink and wash our hands properly. But hand sanitizer, don't use that to use your to wash your hands. This is used in between jobs, or you just want to prep, but washing your hands is the most safest and most economical way of making sure there is no bacteria on your food. Let's go to the sink. Now we're at the sink and we're going to wash our hands. Now the first thing is, make sure that your nails are clean. If they are not clean, we're going to have to add an extra step. So what we're going to do is wash our hands. Now the most important thing is to get some soap, hand soap. It could be a bar of soap or it could be this, liquid soap. We're going to lather our hands and we're going to we're going to actually make sure that we wash them properly. We're going to go through and rub and make sure that we lather. Now it takes about 30 seconds to do it properly. So we're going to do that. We're going to rinse and we're going to repeat. So essentially, we're going to start, we're going to turn our tap on. Now if your nails are dirty because you've been in the garden, if the nails are dirty, we're going to use a scrubbing brush first with some water and we scrub our nails first, especially if you've been out in the garden, okay? And you do that before you wash your hands. So all excess dirt and run them under the water so no excess dirt. Now our hands have some wetness on them. We're going to do one squirt first. Oops. Two. Now that soap is on my hand and we're going to rub first of all. Rubbing and interlocking fingers. Rubbing down the length of those fingers. We do it for both hands. Circular motions and rubbing each individual hand. And as I said, this takes about 30 seconds. And if you don't know how long 30 seconds is, sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Now we've done that once. I'm going to do it again. Again. And this time, rubbing around the wrist, the back of the hands, and again, we are washing our hands. This is how long it takes to properly wash your hands. Now, just to make sure, you can never get enough soap. Again, I'm rubbing my thumb and each individual finger. I'm rubbing my wrist. Don't forget your nails. And make sure that it's all done. And we have now properly washed our hands. We are now rinsing for the last time. Make sure it all gets off. And 1, 2, 3. We just kind of drain. Now you can do one of two things. You can use some paper towel, or make sure you have a hand towel in the kitchen. A hand towel can be hanging around. It's not a tea towel. Do not wash them on your clothes. Do not dry them on your clothes because there could be bacteria on them. We've used a hand towel, or you can use some paper towel. Let's go back to the board. Now we've washed our hands, we're ready to move into the kitchen. Now, this will go faster as you progress along in the kitchen. We're going to use our board and our knives now. We're going to get ready. This is called mise en place. Mise en place is a French term for chefs. Everything in its place, so it's all ready to go. Mise en place means just everything in its place. Simple as that. So we're going to do something. We're going to talk about boards. Chopping boards are very crucial in the kitchen. Now the first thing before we even talk about boards, we get a wet chucks, and I mean wet. This is important. So this is the disposable cloth that we're going to put onto our surface. It doesn't matter what surface you have. You could have Laminex like this. You could have marble. You could have wood. You could have stainless steel. It doesn't matter. You put a nice wet cloth on, and as I'm pushing on it, there is no movement. So we're going to place our board on top of this. There is a positive to it at the end, because when you're finished, we can wipe down the bench with it as well. But we're going to talk about the board. Now, most people would have one of these. It's a chopping board. This is a glass chopping board. I do not like using glass in a kitchen. Even though I'm going to put the board down, glass does two things. A glass is slippery, so when you're cutting, especially when you're cutting big objects like pumpkin, it can slip. The other thing with glass, it's pretty decorative, pretty nice in the kitchen, but as you're cutting on a board, can you hear that sound? The glass is blunting the knife. It's blunting the knife. So we're not going to use glass. The two boards I suggest that you could use is either a Perspex one, a plastic one. They come in different colors. We'll talk about that in a second. And I can put my board down. It doesn't move. It doesn't make this horrible sound. And it doesn't move. So you've got this nice one. You can buy these in the shops. We're going to talk about that one in a second. We'll come back to it. Or you could use a wooden board. Wooden board. Okay? At home you can use them because they are clean. Wood boards are clean. All you need to do is, like all boards, rinse them down, wash them in the sink, but also rinse with some salt and kills any bacteria. So you can use a wood or a Perspex board. But today, we're going to use this board. Now there is different colours. Why is there different colours? There is a lot of cross-contamination when it comes to boards. Cross-contamination means I've cut my raw chicken or my chicken breast, and then I move my chicken off into the pan, and then I come along and I start cutting my vegetables. No, we don't want that. If anything, you use a different board. Red is for meat and all meat products. So if you're using it, use a red one. Blue is normally chicken or fish. There is also green, which is vegetable. There is also brown for cooked meats. There is also a clear one that is for general purpose. Now, ideally, I like having two boards. One for my protein and one for my vegetables. So always have two boards in, and underneath we have a wet chucks or wet cloth that goes underneath. We now have a board that does not move. And I'm a big boy and I can try and push. It's not moving. That's safety. Now the second part of safety, it's important. A lot of people doesn't matter what knife we use, or we could use a knife from the knife block or a chef knife. It needs to be sharp. A blunt knife, and I'll just show you, causes more injury by pushing hard. With a knife, it should be through easy. A blunt knife, you have to use more force and you could stab or cut your finger. Now, not to scare anyone, what we're going to do is show you a way of holding a knife properly. The blunt knife, a sharp knife, you get a tool that's similar like this to sharpen and make sure it's always sharpened. If you can't do this, then get your butcher or someone else to sharpen your knives. It is important because if it's blunt, it will cut. Okay, we're going to show you how to use that. We've got our potato. And essentially, we do not want to put our fingers like so, because if I'm chopping, I could cut my finger. We do not want this. We do what is called a cat's claw. It looks like a cat's paw, and essentially what we're going to do is our knuckles are folded over, our fingers are folded over like that. And a cat's claw, we're still holding, we're holding the potato, but our fingers aren't sticking out, so I'm not going to chop them. Here, as a cat's claw, what I'm doing is the knife runs down my fingers and doesn't cut me. The cat's claw also holds it. When you're coming to the end of the potato, for example, you can hold it steady like this, but use the cat's claw for most of it when you're cutting. And you can cut different sizes and things like that. Make sure you use a sharp knife and use a cat's claw style so that your fingers aren't going to be cut off. That is important. We're going to come back and show you more things to do in the kitchen. So, we've looked at washing our hands. We've got a board that's safe. We've got sharp knives and we know how to cut. What we're going to do now, before we cook anything, we're going to get our fruit and vegetables and wash them. Now for this exercise, I'm going to show you in a tub of water, clean water. It's great because what we can do is show you here, instead of doing it in the sink, you can do this in the sink. You wash all your fruit and vegetables, and ideally when you get them from the grocery store, bring them home, rinse them first, then put them away in the fridge, and it gives you guarantee that they're clean. All vegetables and all fruit. That includes strawberries, so any berries like blueberries as well, right through to apples, to lemons, all your fruit, wash them because you eat them directly. Now all we're going to do is rinse them in the tub. Now fresh running water is ideal, but we're going to wash. Now the good thing about doing this in a tub, if you're growing your herbs at home, you can actually use this water to put on your gardens, and we're washing because you're washing off the pesticides and potentially any wax on the product. We do that with our fruit. We do that with our vegetables, especially potatoes, because they're grown in dirt. And make sure, even though they're washed, they say they're washed in the supermarket, just rinse them again because you don't know what they're washed in, right? Even as simple as this onion, rinse it. It's growing in the ground. Make sure when you're rinsing it and drain on paper towel. Herbs, things like carrots, or even salad leaves, rinse out because they have sand, they have dirt, and it comes out in the water. Now use that water on your gardens, which is fantastic of saving it. So when you come home from the shops, wash all your fruit and vegetables, grapes, right through to carrots, right through to peas, lettuce, rinse them all. Use that water out in your garden so you don't waste any water. Your vegetables are now dry and we're ready for use. Okay, we've washed our vegetables. We're ready for use, are we? We're going to stop there and wait. Protein. If you're using protein, whether it be fish, chicken, meat, you need to do two things. You're either going to use it fresh, straight from the store, which is ideal, or you're going to put some meat away in the freezer, especially things like mince, especially when it's cheaper. Put them in the freezer, wrap them up. Now, if you're going to get something for dinner, what we're going to do is get our meal out earlier. Ideally, if it's been in the freezer, do not use the microwave to defrost. Do not fill your sink up with water and let it defrost in there. Ideally, in the best case scenario, get your frozen mince out or meat, put on a plate and put in the fridge. And it's important, put back into the fridge, not the freezer, the night before. So if you know that you're making spaghetti bolognese, get your meat out the night before and put it on a plate in the fridge. It will allow to defrost in the fridge. So a plate and 24 hours ideally, or 8 hours at least, so that it starts to defrost in the fridge. You put that on a plate and we're ready to go essentially. By defrosting your meat, it's important. If you put it in a sink of water, one, it's not good because water will seep into the package and also go through the meat, which is not ideal. But the other thing is some people leave it in the sink, think it's okay. Now remember, food safety is important. If it's above 60 degrees, it's safe to eat. If it's below 60 degrees, between 5 degrees and 60 degrees, that is what we call the danger zone. 5 degrees to 60 degrees. From 60 degrees onwards, it's cooked and it's at the right temperature. 5 degrees and below, it's either in the fridge or the freezer. But 5 degrees to 60 is the time we need to worry. So leaving this out for more than 2 hours can get bacteria into the meat. That's why we do not leave it in the sink. Do not cook in the microwave unless you have to, because when you put it in the microwave, it cooks the meat really tough. So the best way is putting it on there. 5 to 60 degrees. Any longer than 2 hours, then you have to throw that meat out because that protein has now got susceptible to bacteria. Now, we're nearly ready to make our spaghetti bolognese. It's important. We've got our meat defrosted. We've done our vegetables. We've got our boards. We've washed our hands. Wash your hands after washing the vegetables. Wash your hands after touching the meat. But we're ready to go. We're going to talk about a few other safety things as well. We're going to cut our onion. Again, cat's claw position. Straight through the base. Okay. Like so. Now the right knife for the right job. A big one is for things like pumpkin or bigger things. Next one is for smaller things. So a paring knife goes in and we peel that skin off. Now I'm just going to show you something once we peel this onion. Okay, even though our onion is washed, do not... So what we've just done, we've got it peeled. So we're going to put this, I'm going to show you something in a second. All our wastage, if you can, put it into a compost bin, in like so. And that can be great for the garden or outside for fertilizer. But what we need to do is use the other side of the board and we wash our hands because we've just touched the bin. You can actually use a sanitizer because we've washed our hands and we've just touched the bin. Now I've got a clean board still underneath. I've got an onion that's peeled and ready to go, and my hands are clean. You're cooking for other people and it's important. So when you cut an onion, you can cut it a couple of ways. So if you wanted some nice sliced onion, like so, or we could do something different, making it flatter. See how it's flat? We've cut it in half, and we can cut some nice, simple strips. So right now we've got some slice. Now let me just put that down. Some nice slices that we can use. We've got some nice strips. I'll just show you this quickly. You also can take it apart and have some nice diced onion like so, whole. Or if you want to fine dice, I'm going to show you really quickly this one. So you can actually leave the base on it. Cat's claw, one stroke down, slice in between, like so. And we're going to make a beautiful diced onion for our bolognese. Little strips. Then you get your knife, cat's claw position, holding the onion because it's now holding it. Cut down. 2, 3. And what we're going to do, we now have a fantastic dice that we can use for our bolognese. All parts of the do not waste food. You can use all parts. Your sliced one is good for the barbecue or a steak that you want to put on. These ones are good for stir fry. So you could actually stir fry cut in those. These are very good for casseroles. And this is very good for bolognese or smaller dishes where you don't want to see the onion. So we've just cut an onion 4 different ways. Sliced, you can actually even do sliced rings. You've got the nice strips. You've got the bulk. And you've got the smaller dice. We've got our onions ready. Now we're going to cook our dish, but we're not going to show you that today because that's last week's lesson. You've learnt your bolognese. You've cooked your bolognese. We're going to talk about a few things. So you have all your ingredients for your bolognese because the recipes are in front of you. Now, I just want to show you something really quick. If you cannot get meat during the week, or you don't have enough meat, or you want to spread the dish out further, have cans of lentils or beans in your cupboard. Lentils, fantastic protein. Lentils or chickpeas, you can use them in your dish to extend out, or if you can use them as a substitute instead of meat. Having canned items, they're a cheap item that you can get regularly. They've got good nutrition inside, and what you do is you keep them in the cupboard when they're on special, and you can use these and you can make a Mexican dish. We could make a bolognese with lentils. There's lots of different options we can do. Other things like canned tomatoes or tomato paste, fantastic because it's a great foundation for building your dishes. The other thing is you can also have dried herbs. Now when we buy a can, we need to make sure, it's important, that the can is all intact. All intact. No dents. If there is a dent in the can, do not buy it. Even if it's on special. If you do not want dents in the can. So a nice can with no dents we've seen. Now, in Australia, we have two types of can. We have a ring pull, which is really easy or designed to get out and open. We have one that has no ring pull. And this is important because you may need a can opener for this one. And to do that, you need to open it with the can opener. This is what can openers look like now. This is what can openers look like right now. There is other ones as well which are by hand, but you need to open your can like so. Open the can fully, drain away. Now I'm going to show you something. Do not store food in cans like this in the fridge, because what happens is sometimes, especially things like tomatoes, they have high acid content and they'll start to rust the inside of the can. You do not oxidize the can. What we're going to do, we've opened this can of prunes, which I'm not in a hurry to eat. Now we can either get a takeaway container. It's important to put things away nicely because you don't want pests or anything in there or other flavors from the fridge. It's important to use your fridge as the safety tool. Put everything away. We can either use that or a nice container where we have a nice lid and we can put away. Now what we're going to do is our prunes. I'm going to put it in the takeaway container. But I want all that nice juice because we're going to use it for baking. Gently put in like so. Put your can in your recycling bin. And what you do is you put your lid on tightly. Make sure it's fully on. And if you can, or get some masking tape and put a date on it. So you know when you put it in there. So also look on the side of the can to see the second shelf life, to see how long it will last. It may say 3 to 4 days, or it may say 7 days. You know it's the 3rd of the 10th, so we're going to make sure that we do the 3rd of the 10th, and we know that 3 days. The other thing is, find your best before date that's on the can, and make sure it is in date. That says 2022, but there might be a secondary shelf life on there. We know that it's 3 days, and we're going to use that. That's in the fridge, nicely stacked away. Every time you put a container, now you don't have to put it into a container. You can also do two things. But before we go there, jars. We talked about no dents in the can. Jars are also great for dishes in the kitchen. On here, all our jars have what's called a tamper seal. You can see that's sucked in and it's nice and tight. If you go along and you see in the shop that there's a button and you can press it and it's got this, makes a kind of a noise, it means it's popped. It's no good. So therefore, this one's sealed. If I open it like so, hear that noise? That is now popped. And that is no good to use. So do not buy that at all, because now I'm going to have to put that in the fridge that I've opened it, and we'll put it into our container. You can also put it into freezer bags or Ziploc bags, which seals everything in there nicely. Again, there's space to write your date, where you can put it in the microwave, the fridge, or the freezer for later on. The other good thing these are good for is putting away little bits of onion, lemon that you're going to use for next time, or even garlic. And the great thing with these is you can put them in the fridge and they don't release any flavour out. The other thing is using cling film or Glad wrap. Wrap it nicely. Do not use a lot of foil for wrapping things away, because sometimes foil can corrode depending what's in it. So if it's lots of tomatoes, do not use foil. But I'm just going to show you cling refill. I'll show you another little trick. When you buy these, the roll comes in and out and it moves. It's quite annoying. I'm just going to show you a really quick tip. On the side of the box, there's a dot. You can push these in like so. And what happens is, which is awesome, that roll doesn't move because these little tabs on the side have locked the roll in place and the roll doesn't move. Nice, really simple tip. Now, we're nearly finished. Make sure also all your dry ingredients like spaghetti, if we've opened it, put into a nice jar with a nice rubber seal so that no things get in. Even though it's dried, rats, mice, cockroaches still can go on it. And we want to make sure it's safe and away, so put that in your pantry. Now, we have cooked our spaghetti bolognese and you've got some left over. This is the most important part of today's talk. If you get your leftovers after cooking it, find a nice container that you can put away and pour your leftovers into the container. Put your leftovers in, and we'll use the tomato sauce that we had before. So pour your leftovers into the container. Now this, just imagine this was a bolognese. We've poured into the container, it's still hot. I would suggest leaving it out on the bench, like so, for no more than 30 to 40 minutes. Let it cool down slightly. Put the lid on. Again, date or write what it was, spaghetti bowl. Put it on there and then put it in the fridge. Make sure that if you've got some room, that there's some space so the air can circulate around the fridge so it cools faster. By putting it into a container, it cools it down. Do not leave it in the pot. It will still stay hot. So in the container, we put it in the fridge and make sure there's some space nearby that you can use it. Ideally, things like meat-based products have a 2 to 3 day maximum day usage. So after putting it in, you've cooled it down. I can eat this tomorrow. So today's Monday. I can eat this Tuesday. I potentially can eat it Wednesday. Thursday, we probably say no, but you check it. And if it's not good, you put it into your waste bin and leave it alone. Do not let it sit longer than 3 days. If it does, it's not safe to consume. It's important to know this, especially with meat. Tomatoes, 7 days in the fridge. And you can use that every night that I'm going to cook. Also, when you're using it, make sure you use clean cutlery each and every time. So I got a spoon out, and that's a clean one. If it's dirty, do not use it. Use a clean one so that you always make sure that you're not cross-contaminating. Because if it's dirty, you've used it in the pot, you don't want to contaminate this, especially if it's going to be used the next few days. So remember that. Do not keep meat longer than 3 days. 2 days is ideal for a cooked meal unless it goes into the freezer straight away. That hopefully gives you enough cooking tips to get you through the kitchen. Now remember what we talked about today. We talked about washing your hands, how to wash your hands properly. We talked about board safety. We talked about how to put the board on safe. And by the way, just to show you that, I can put my board in the sink now. I've used it. And I've got a clean cloth that I can wipe down the bench. Once that's done, in the compost heap because it will break down, or the garbage bin. And I've got a clean bench to start down next time. Make sure that you wipe down your bench with chemicals and clean. We showed you about knives and how to use knives and to keep them sharp. We showed you about how to cut the vegetables. We also showed you different ways of cutting your vegetables. We showed you how to use different boards when it's hot. We also talked about using hand sanitizer, especially when you touch your face or when you're doing something new. We talked about storage, and we talked about the danger zone between 5 and 60 degrees. between 5 and 60 degrees any longer than 2 hours, we're now in the danger zone. So we need to make sure we get our groceries from the shops straight into the fridge as soon as we can. Our leftovers, 30 to 40 minutes on the bench cooled, then in the fridge straight away, maximum 2 to 3 days. That is all my tips from today. Hopefully you enjoy my video. Please go on and like any other videos. And for this today, I will be online answering any of your questions at the end of this. So stay online, ask me some questions, and I'm more than happy to answer them. But these are safety tips to help you cooking and help your family stay safe. So bye for now. I'm Chef Adam Moore. Hopefully you enjoyed.